Insects are an integral part of every garden. There are some that the garden cannot do without in order to flourish, and there are others that we would be much happier to see take up a different place of residence. Farming and gardening organically for over 15 years has kept me on very close terms with the insect world. This relationship has fostered a tremendous respect for our little brethren that we call bugs. Yet the mere word can evoke disgust in many Americans. Though most of us in this country live a relatively bug-free existence, they are a major part of mine. They are my friends, my enemies, and my companions. They have been awe-inspiring to me. They overwhelm me with their overabundance and diversity. And they've caused me a tremendous amount of work and frustration. I've killed them, saved them, and even bought them. They bring beauty and joy on the wings of a butterfly, yet the occasional scorpion can still give me a touch of the willies. They're a part of my life like the flowers in spring, and they've made me a better human being by showing me that they are not insignificant, just small and numerous. I hope this will help to alter the common perception that bugs are bad, and temper it into an awareness of what is going on in your own gardens. And maybe that awareness will even bring a sense of wonder for the incredible diversity, beauty, and necessary work that they do in this environment we call the garden. A distant relative to bees, ants are a major force in the garden. There is an incredible intelligence and order to the way in which hive bees and the ants operate. When disturbed, they quickly get to work in complete cooperation, in a way that surpasses the most organized attempts of man. Within 25 minutes, this nest was reorganized and settled in a new location without questions or visible orders being given. Able to lift and move many times their own weight, they help to clean up the garden of the dead and the dying, and their sheer numbers relate to the movement of literally tons of dirt, loosening and aerating the soil. Ants cover these peonies in spring, and without them these flowers would not open. On the downside, some ants farm and distribute aphids, a persistent garden pest. Almost oblivious to the ants, the aphids secrete a sweet substance called honeydew that the ants feed on. These tiny pests are an incredibly prolific species. Their numbers can increase from just a few to thousands in an extremely short period of time. They are found throughout the garden through most of the year, sucking juices from plants. Even so, they are rarely a problem in a healthy garden. Though they are prolific, or because of it, there is always an abundance of predators to keep them in check. Of the three most common predators of aphids, lacewings, hoverflies, And ladybugs. Ladybugs seem to have the most impact on their numbers. This young ladybug larva ate 6 in the short time I was filming. This tiny wasp parasitizes aphids and leaves behind a mummified shell. Though not insects, spiders, and some of the other non-insects that we'll be covering, play a very important role in this dance of balance that takes place in the natural world, and has kept this planet vibrant, thriving, and healthy for eons. One of the most efficient predators of this miniature world, they have developed gossamer silk, stronger than steel, venoms to immobilize their prey, and an incredible diversity of all different sizes, shapes, and colors. The garden spider makes its web out in the open, and is capable of handling fairly large prey. The silk pours out in a net-like band to subdue even this powerful katydid. Not as fearsome as we have been brought up to believe, the black widow is actually very timid and chooses to hide immediately if disturbed. Though venomous, their timid nature makes them relatively harmless. Rarely seen in the garden, the brown recluse, though less venomous, is much more deserving of the black widow's bad reputation. They can infest barns, sheds, and houses, and a bite can take months to heal. Jumping spiders are my personal favorite. Since they don't make webs and travel a lot in search of food, they seem to have the most personality of the bunch. Another group that rarely makes a web and hunts on the run is the wolf spider, which tends to be one of the larger spiders in the garden. It carries its egg sac and even takes care of its young until they can find their feet. Crab spiders are another personal favorite, sometimes brightly colored and yet perfectly camouflaged. They often take up residence in flowers, awaiting unsuspecting prey. Spiders, the king of the garden predators. Or are they? Even predators have predators. Many wasps use spiders as food for their young. In a strange display of karma, mud daubers and several other wasps will sting a spider to paralyze it, so that their young will have a fresh live host to eat throughout their development. This nest that was accidentally knocked down during a construction project reveals that this wasp specialized in black widow spiders. Though many of us realize the immense importance that bees play in pollinating plants, wasps go largely unnoticed as a major contributor to keeping the insect population in balance. In a nearby park, these sand wasps are working to keep the local stink bug population in check. Paralyzed by a sting, its prey is deposited into a hole, and an egg is laid on it. The hole is covered, and it's time to look for some more prey. Meanwhile, like David and Goliath, the tiny braconid wasp, barely larger than the head of a pin, takes on the largest caterpillar in the garden. Eggs were laid on this tomato hornworm, and tiny larvae burrowed in. Now they emerge to spin a cocoon and start the process all over again. But even they are not safe, as this chalcidoid wasp parasitizes the braconid larvae as they emerge. Still, by the next morning, the hornworm is shriveled and dead. Many wasps also help to clear the garden of its caterpillar population. There are many other predatory wasps in the garden, such as this ichneumon, and this species that's taken a liking to aphids. Flies are one of the most misunderstood of garden insects, looked at as filthy, disgusting creatures. But a closer look unveils a different side of this group. This predatory tachinid fly could easily be mistaken for a housefly. There are only a few species of this group that are a nuisance in our gardens, such as these onion maggots, or this parsley root fly maggot. Most of the flies that I have come across during my filming have been beneficial predators and important pollinators. Hoverflies are probably the most common predatory fly in our gardens. Their larvae feed on aphids and scales. Tachinid flies are another valuable garden predator. While the adults are off feeding on nectar, their larvae are feeding on caterpillars and true bugs. One of the most interesting of this group is the robber fly. Feeding on a large variety of insects, I have seen them in flight with grasshoppers, larger than themselves. Even this long-legged fly, that is a common inhabitant to the edges of our garden, feeds on small insects and mites. One of the most diverse of the insect groups. There are over 300,000 different beetle species in the world, comprising a third of all the insects. Whether predators, pests, ground beetles, tree beetles, dung beetles, or just plain strange beetles. Some of the worst problems in the garden come from this group, though there are also many beneficials. The adult leatherwings feed primarily on pollen, but their larvae spend their life in the soil, feeding on pests. Filling every child and most adults with wonder for their light shows, the lightning bug's life cycle closely resembles that of the leatherwing. Flea beetles can be a real nuisance to crops. Unprotected eggplant seedlings can quickly be devoured by this tiny pest. The Mexican bean beetle can overwhelm bean plants, but since it takes them a while to get established in new plantings, successions normally ensure a consistent crop. Sometimes showing up in hordes at the end of the summer, blister beetles can wreak havoc on many crops. The most frustrating of this group to me is both the striped and spotted cucumber beetles. They do not kill the plant by eating it, but by spreading disease through our melons and cucumbers. Many beetles spend the first half of their life in the ground in the form of grubs, such as the Japanese beetle, June bug, or this click beetle, whose larva is sometimes found in our potatoes. The Colorado potato beetle is always an abundant presence in our potato patches, but only severe infestations will seriously affect the quantity at harvest time. These insects suck, and I mean really suck, whether they are predators or herbivores. The predators, mostly known as assassin bugs, play a major role in the garden. Stabbing its prey with a needle-like mouth or proboscis, it sucks its internal fluids. This one shows up every year to help keep the bean beetles in check. This bizarre-looking creature, known as a wheel bug, is feeding on a cucumber beetle, but it will take nearly anything it can get its legs on. The herbivores of this group, the stink bug, and other foul-smelling relatives, are common pests, many resembling their assassin brethren, but suck on the juices of plants. This one, which deforms our beans, is difficult for amateurs to distinguish from a predatory stink bug on the same plant. Though most are not a nuisance in the garden, one stands out as one of the most destructive pests roaming these fields. The squash bug injects fluids into the plant before feeding. These digestive juices are devastating to squash plants and can turn them from healthy, thriving plants to this in a matter of days. One of the most interesting members of this group is the incredibly well-camouflaged ambush bug. They're able to catch formidable prey as they await the multitude of unsuspecting guests that continually visits its flowers. Butterflies are one of the most adored of the insect world. Entire gardens are planted specifically to bring these creatures in to grace our landscapes. Though few are a problem, some, such as this southern white or this European cabbage butterfly, can be a real pest. Their larvae can infest cabbage, broccoli, and other brassicas, and can cause a tremendous amount of damage if left unchecked. There are many other caterpillars that find their way into our gardens, but for the most part they're not serious pests. The eastern black, or parsley swallowtail, falls into this group. When disturbed, it produces a strong smell from its two orange horns. It munches on carrots, parsley, and other related species. The squash vine borer burrows into the stems of squash and pumpkins. And once the gardener realizes it, it's usually too late. Grasshoppers are a much more diverse group than they are given credit for. Though they have a bad reputation, they are rarely a problem unless their numbers soar out of control. Most leafhoppers do little damage, and grace the garden with an incredible display of color and diversity. The most personable of garden insects, the praying mantis seems to look at you with a questioning gaze. They can sometimes spend much of their adult life on a single plant and are capable of taking some large prey. With just a few different species in this group, they're at the top of the insect food chain, with few enemies. This can make them quite tame and fairly unafraid of an open hand. Babies hatch out in spring from a styrofoam-like egg case, quickly dispersing to look for prey. Of the innumerable insects that visit our gardens every growing season, some just seem to defy being placed in a common group. When I first saw walking sticks on our filbert trees, I grabbed my insect book to see what they fed on. Of course, first on the list was filberts. This has become a cardinal rule for me in understanding most of what is happening in the world of garden insects. If a certain insect is on a certain plant, more often than not, it either eats that plant or the pests of that plant. If an insect is found throughout a wide variety of plants, it's most likely a predator. In other words, most pests are usually plant-specific. This is a garden oddity. Though usually confined to the open fields, the spittlebug sometimes ventures to the edges of the garden, surrounding itself with a bubbly nest. A welcome visitor to the skies over our gardens, the dragonfly eats on the wing, snatching up mosquitoes and other small flying insects. The pillbug, which is actually related to lobsters and crabs, and breathes with gills, can be a real pest if their numbers get out of hand. Hiding under brick borders, rocks, and just about any other debris on the soil, they emerge at night to eat any low-lying vegetation. Dancing bugs, as I call them, take up residence on our bamboo. Every little movement sends them scurrying to find a new order, not too close, but not too far from one another. The scorpion is another unusual guest to these fields, emerging at night to feed on spiders and insects. Understanding the world is not always an easy, straightforward process. Sometimes we have to look closely and scrutinize without judgment to see the truth that lies within. Sometimes we have to have faith that this incredible creation we know as nature works from intelligence, order, abundance, and diversity. Every creature sees the world differently. Experiences the world differently. The greatest untapped talent of humanity is to see the world from another's point of view. In this way, we can find beauty and wonder in the most unexpected places. So as fall turns to winter, and the realm of the insect briefly passes into a fading memory, and as most gardeners dread the coming onslaught of insects into their future garden, I look forward to another spring as I welcome back insects to my garden.